So maybe we can start in a minute or two. And
yeah.
Let's say in 2 minutes. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, 9:05.
9:05.
Oh, it seems to be slowing down. Okay.
So I can continue to let people in, and then if you want to start, and then after you've finished your introduction, then I'll hand over to you and you can continue to let people in if there's more people to be let in.
Perfect.
Does that sound okay?
Thank you. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Tony. So
okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from all over the world. It's great to see so many people. My name is Monica Harris. I'm the SMART Partnership Manager. And just before we start, just want to share some information with you. Can you please make sure you're muted throughout the presentations? And we are recording this session. I hope that's okay with you so we can share with other SMART users afterwards. You are very welcome to use the chat. And we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So feel free to submit your questions at the end. Throughout the presentation, and I'll be compiling the questions, and then we can go through as many as we have time for at the end. Okay, next slide, Tony, please. Okay, so on behalf of the SMART Partnership, I'd like to welcome you all to the second session in our SMART webinar series, Getting Started with SMART, how SMART can help improve effectiveness of protected areas. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers. Next slide, please. So the agenda for today is we're going to kickstart with an overview session about SMART. And then we're going to have 5 amazing case studies from different parts of the world covering terrestrial and marine cases. And then, as I said, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I'd like to introduce our speakers next. So for the overview session, my colleagues from the SMART Partnership, Rohit Singh from WWF and Tony Linen from WCS will be leading those sessions. That session. And then for the case studies, we have Kinglit Sharing from the Forest and Park Services in Bhutan, Michael Holt from WCS, working in Russia and surrounding areas, Julio Mas from WCS in Belize, David Kinai from the Maasai Wilderness Conservation Trust in Kenya, and Jorge Duarte from the Colombian National Parks, the government of Colombia. So over to you now, Rohit.
Thanks, Monica. So just to quickly introduce myself, I'm part of the SMART Partnership and also work for WWF, and I've been involved with SMART for the last 10 years. So I'm going to give you a quick overview on SMART, and then I will hand over to Tony for the details. So let's start with what is SMART. So when we say what is SMART, the first thing that comes in mind, it's a software. It is a software, but it is not just a software. It's an approach, and software is sort of one important component of it. SMART approach is designed around 3 major pillars. One is effective software tool, then rigorous enforcement standards, and then third one is long-lasting capacity support. So SMART should not be seen as just a software tool, but it should be seen as an approach that with sort of a mission to improve effectiveness of protected areas and empowering practitioners with technology, services, and skills so that they can use the very limited resources they have in the right areas. Next slide, please. So SMART is though it started as a law enforcement monitoring tool, but in last 10 years it has evolved more sort of an as a holistic protected area management tool with the systems including mobile, desktop, online platforms, and an ability to integrate several other functions, several other applications that are available in market that can be integrated into SMART system. Next. The SMART is probably the only tool that is so widely used across the globe. It's being used for terrestrial parks, marine parks, and also freshwater sites. A lot of freshwater sites are using SMART. Many countries have made it mandatory to use SMART. 17 countries have mandated SMART use. There are 1,000 sites that we are aware of there that are using SMART. There might be more sites, and we are talking about roughly 60 countries where SMART is currently being used for law enforcement monitoring and protected area monitoring. Next. So SMART, I think another good thing about SMART, and I can say this because I have been involved in this so right from day one, it's not sort of a one organization driven tool. It's a partnership that has developed it, and it's supported by several donor agencies, government agencies, and several conservation organizations. So it has a wider sort of an acceptance and support available. Next. So now I'm going to quickly talk for like next 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to quickly take you through some of the key questions that you should answer before you start thinking of SMART. So the 3 key questions that you must answer before you start, before you think that you should start using SMART in your protected area. So first key question is, do you have other monitoring systems that are in place that can do all the protected area management or law enforcement monitoring work? And if not, then SMART may be able to help you. The other thing is that what you also need to understand is, you need to answer is, what are your management goals? What are your conservation goals? Or what are you trying to answer? Or what are you trying to achieve in your protected area? And can SMART help you to achieve those conservation goals? And it is really important that you answer these 3 goals. And with our experience, we have learned this, that you need to, it is really key, and Tony will talk about these points in detail. It is really key to answer these goals rather than just jumping straight to a training and installing a software. There is a process that you need to follow. And of course, there are some basic conditions that needs to be in place before you start using SMART. Next, please. So there are few first steps that you must take before you start using SMART. And the very first step is your site even suitable for SMART? If you don't have rangers, if you don't have a proper management structure where rangers are being managed properly, or rangers are going out on a patrol, you don't have a regime where the data collection is happening regularly, then probably SMART is not going to help you. SMART is a tool, it's not a weapon. So it can't address your problems if there is no structure available within your site. Second, that you need to really identify the capacity needs and the financial and the management needs before you start using SMART. And also the SMART implementation will need certain capacity, financial support, and you need to really identify those things right in the beginning. Otherwise, you may not get the results that you're looking for. And the third point, which is quite important, is from our experience, we know that, it's not like you install a software in a computer and you start getting a great report and everything is great. It doesn't work that way. It takes time to get things going, and you need to always make sure that your smart implementation plan is realistic and it has sort of a sustainable, long-term, sustainable plans. Then only you can see the success. It's not, you're not going to see results within 1 or 2 months or 6 months. Next. There are some basic requirements for SMART, and these requirements, as I mentioned, you need to have a formal structure in the site, conservation site, whether it's a protected area or a non-protected area, whether it's a marine park, terrestrial park, or a Ramsar site. You need to have some sort of a formal structure where the frontline staff are going out and gathering information. There is a control and command system where the frontline staffs are managed by the management. And second point, which is quite important, is you need to have some endorsement from the government agency, whichever protected area agency you're working under. This may vary. In some countries, you may need a national endorsement, and some countries, you may need a provincial endorsement, but it is important to have some sort of acknowledgement or endorsement from the government for SMART. Otherwise, what happened? The park manager is very keen on it, and it works as long as that park manager is there. And as soon as that park manager gets transferred, new park manager doesn't care about SMART. So you really need some sort of endorsement from the government agency for the use of SMART. And you also there needs to be a commitment to improve the management system, because if you remember the first slide I said, the ultimate aim is to make protected areas more effective. And that's why there needs to be a commitment to make these protected areas more effective. You also need to do some financial planning to ensure that adequate resources are in place to operate patrols, because if you don't have money, if the parks don't, if the national park doesn't have adequate resources to run basic operations in the park, SMART is really not going to help. So these are some sort of a basic requirements you need to fulfill for SMART. Here I will hand over to Tony.
Thanks, Rohit. So my name is Tony Lynham. I work for the Wildlife Conservation Society in the Global Conservation Technology team, and very pleased to be here with you. I wanted to talk to you about some of the aspects of SMART that we need to think about before we get into implementing. And the most important thing is to ensure quality. So there's a lot of people who are jumping into setting up SMART without really thinking how it should be done to produce quality results. So to get the best results, you want to have people attending training workshops. You want to have a standard way of building the capacity. And so we suggest that if it's possible, partner up with one of the SMART partners. We have developed training approaches, and we've developed a lot of experience on how to do SMART, and we can help to build that capacity. And we're here to help you provide advice and to provide support and technical support for getting SMART up and running. Involve experienced people from conservation agencies, conservation NGOs. There's a lot of people with SMART expertise now, and we're willing to provide support where needed. Where you have issues or problems with using SMART, there's a SMART forum that you can go to, and you can post problems, and you can write and ask for advice and support. And you can share your experiences and expertise on the SMART forum. So it's very important to ensure that SMART is implemented in a way that ensures quality results. So when you're preparing to do SMART, you want to think of a number of things before you jump in. The first thing is you probably want to understand what are the threats affecting your conservation area. Where are the threats? coming from, what's the distribution of threats, prioritize the threats. So hold a workshop to bring together stakeholders to come to an understanding of what are the threats affecting the conservation area, define the conservation targets, figure out what you're really trying to protect, what species of wildlife, species of plants, what habitats, what cultural values, what important indigenous sites are being protected, and set up some indicators that can help you to figure out where you are in terms of your conservation approach. Define the reporting needs, and it's important to decide who needs to be reported to and what information they need to have. And that defines the data model and defines the reporting formats for SMART. So define what those reporting needs are before you start. Otherwise, you might end up setting up a data model and then producing results that people aren't reading or taking notice of because they don't actually align with what's required. Identify the different sources of data collection. So where is data going to be coming from? From patrol teams, from community teams, from research teams. Define where the information is going to be coming from. And SMART is able to incorporate data sources from many different types of field teams. By creating mandates, we can have community teams that are focusing on managing areas around human settlements, managing community lands. Then we can have law enforcement teams, we can have anti-poaching teams, we can have research and monitoring teams, all contributing data that can go into the SMART database. Then you design your data model and the collection protocols. Design the data sheets or design the SMART mobile configured model that you need to be collecting the data. Identify mechanisms for making sure that the information that comes from SMART actually gets to the people that need to see it. The managers need to be able to receive reports in a timely fashion. They need to get the information from the field, and then they need to be able to be in a position to make decisions based upon the information and feed that back to the front line in the form of patrol plans. It's also important to consider setting up ways to incentivize rangers and evaluate their performance. And you can do that by linking with the SMART results. And finally, you want to configure your SMART database. You want to have the shape files set up. You want to have employee lists. You want to have base maps configured so that you are ready to start collecting data. So these are all the things that you need to think about when preparing to implement SMART at a site. So developing the data model, how is this done? Well, you can start by setting up a SMART working group, a group of people who are concerned about setting up the SMART database. They would be the agency that is leading SMART at the site. It could be a community group, it could be a government agency. Set up a working group to guide the implementation of SMART. Hold a workshop, get the people from the SMART working group together to discuss the data model, reporting formats, how data is going to be collected, so that everybody understands how it's going to happen. You can develop the categories of data, then the attributes of data, and this process can take quite a long time. It can take many months or even up to a year to finalize a data model when you're starting from scratch, to make sure that that data model meets the needs at the site. Often you will be starting from having a data model that's been developed for another conservation area, and you might adapt that for the particular site that you're in. And sometimes you'll start from scratch and you'll build a new data model from nothing. You need to test out the data model through patrol practice. So you need to set up the data model, and then you need to go out and see that it actually works, and see that the field staff are able to correctly identify what they're meant to be recording, the categories and the attributes of data, ensure that the field staff are able to accurately and honestly collect data. So those are some considerations in setting up the data model. The other thing is that there are several roles in SMART, and this is the adaptive management cycle that SMART helps to create. So there are different roles that we need to think about, and you need to think about who's going to fill those roles. So first of all, who's going to be collecting the data? Rangers, community rangers, researchers, who's going to be actually collecting the data that's going into the database. Then who's going to enter the data? Who's going to learn how to use the software to type in the data or to import it from Smart Mobile via your smart devices? Then who's going to be doing the analysis and creating reports? And who's going to read those reports and interpret them and then feed back information? And who's going to be responsible for strategic planning? Who's going to be making decisions based upon the information that's come through the SMART process? And who's going to be creating the patrol plans and sending that back to the front line? So all of these are roles in SMART adaptive management that need to be carefully thought out. Then after you've decided the roles, then you can make a training plan. And SMART has developed through our training task force a set of training resources, a set of training handbooks that can serve as a guide to setting up courses for building the capacity that you need at the site. And those training resources are available from our website. You want to train the frontline staff, the people who are the rangers, community rangers, in how to collect the data. They're going to be responsible for making observations of the wildlife, going to be responsible for navigating through the protected area, the conservation area, and documenting patrol routes with Smart Mobile or Cyber Tracker. You want to also train a person to administer the database, and this is a very important role. The person who administers the SMART database and manages the whole system, you want to carefully choose that person, because that person has a very, very important role. Then you want to train people to analyze data, to create queries and summaries of data and interpret the results of the patrol data. This is really important in order to evaluate the performance and to evaluate trends in the threats that you have being monitored at the site. You also want to train managers to learn how to interpret the data, how to interpret reports, and how to critically think about the information that's coming from SMART. Now, once SMART is up and running, you want to start to evaluate the SMART approach to understand whether it's actually working. Because of course, if it's not improving conservation values, if threats are not being reduced, patrol performance is not improving, and biodiversity is not increasing, then you're not having success. So you want to know that the SMART approach is actually working. So some questions that you might ask of your implementation are things like, is the law enforcement presence being maintained at the site? Are patrols occurring throughout the year or throughout the reporting period? Are patrols happening on a systematic or a regular basis? Is the manager responsive to information coming from patrol teams? And are directives from management based at least partly on this information? Are patrol targets and conservation objectives being met? Are spatial targets being met? Are the rangers going out to the hotspots where poaching is happening? Are they reaching areas where there's land clearance going on? Are they tackling the places where there's illegal logging going on? What are the trends in threat levels? You want to know which kind of patrols are most effective in reducing threats and meeting targets. Is it foot patrols? Is it boat patrols? What are the patrol mandates and transport types that are important in creating success at your site? Is intelligence effective? Is information from the community being incorporated effectively in the SMART process? And is this leading to improved enforcement outcomes? And are patrols sufficiently focused on areas with high threat levels or high densities of conservation target species? And are patrol routes predictable or are they unpredictable? You need to think about these things. So tonight, we have the pleasure of presentations from 5 experts who have been working with SMART at sites around the world for many, many years. And I'm very pleased to introduce 5 case studies, one from Colombia, one from Bhutan, one from Kenya, one from Belize, and one from Central Asia. And these case studies are going to present examples of how SMART is being implemented successfully and the kinds of things that you need to think about when setting up SMART. And the structure of the presentations, we've given the speakers some guiding questions, and these are the guiding questions that the speakers will be thinking about in making their presentations. First of all, where is the site? What are the conservation targets? Why was SMART chosen for use at the site? Who are the champions at the site that made SMART work? What were the main challenges in getting SMART up and running? How long did it take to get established? And what were the main watersheds and achievements along the way? And finally, what are the main drivers that make SMART sustainable? So now I'd like to hand over to Jorge Duarte from Colombia, who's going to give our first presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jorge, we can hear you well.
Okay, share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Jorge Duarte, and I apologize for my English. I don't speak very well, but I try to speak the best possible. I'm the administrator of SMART National Natural Parks of Colombia, and I'm going to present the implementation of SMART in our agency. First of all, Colombia is a country located in South America. You can see in this map the location of the country and the 62 protected areas. In our country there is a agency called National Natural Parks of Colombia. Its objective is to conserve a consistent and guaranteed biological and cultural diversity that the country has. This through the administration of 62 protected areas that go from national parks to sanctuaries or of fauna and flora. In 2014, National Natural Parks decided to try SMART as a tool to support prevention, control, and surveillance activities with SMART. And we could support the documentation and analyze of the pressure or threats that happen inside in protected areas. Also train park rangers in a friendly manner in the use and handling of new technologies and the use of GPS device for a specific purpose. Use a single tool to relate biodiversity monitoring to the threats that may affect them, and have information group to help make decisions that add to the conservation of the protected areas. In this diagram, you can see the process of the implementation to SMART in Colombia. The success of SMART in our country is thanks to, first of all, the most important, the park rangers, who daily collect data in the file and have know who to adapt their work to the use of SMART. Also, WCS, who from beginning has been accompanying the implementation of SMART. the GIA's professionals, our agency that provide continuous support to the park rangers in the implementation. And finally, the heads of national parks in charge who have seen the potential of SMART, have promoted its use and made an institutional tool. The main challenge to get SMART running, in this case, we have 5, the most important. First of all, need 2 GPS device with Android or Windows Mobile in every national parks. For example, the Black View, Mobile Mapper 50, Trimble TDCC, and these devices is very expensive and requires, in this case, an external financing. Trying in smart management through the use of virtual meetings, videos, and manuals. In this case, is very difficult, especially in this pandemic time. Collect information in the ground in protected areas far from towns or cities, where the access to the energy and internet is very limited. And in this point, implement Smart Connect and send information with limited internet access in protected areas is a big challenge. And ownership of Smart by heads of every protected areas. Identify how to show the benefits of Smart to these hits, so that they promote its use. Okay. SMART in Colombia started in 2014 with implementation in 3 protected areas. By 2050, we have 8 protected areas with SMART. In 2016, we have 28 protected areas with SMART. In 2017, we have 53 protected areas with SMART. Then in 2018, we have 58 protected areas with SMART, and start a SMART Connect pilot in 2 protected areas. Then in 2019, we have 58 protected areas with SMART, and 2 of them with SMART Connect implement. And actually in 2020, we have 58 protected areas with SMART, 2 of them with SMART Connect, and 1 of them start to implementation of SMART plugin ecological records. Okay. The use of SMART has allowed for 4 steps. First of all, create new tools to display information such as a dashboard. Can you see here for example? Appropriate technological tools in everyday protected areas are managed by the agency for daily use. We have appropriate for logo and slogan to SMART in Colombia. Automate a process that we previously manual, such as data collection. We have an example of this collect data manual. And finally, generate continuous communication with park rangers who work in protected areas by WhatsApp, email, videos. And then we have a partners for the SMART in Colombia that makes SMART sustainable in our agency. We have WCS, WWF, Frankfurt Zoological Society, European Union, I'm sorry, and National Government of Colombia with the Ministry of Environment that support the acquisition of GPS device for the expensive cost of this GPS, and support the SMART management training. This is it. Thank you for all.
Hi, Tony, we can't hear you.
Yes, so next speaker is Kinley Sharing from Bhutan.
Hello.
Kinley, would you like to share your screen?
Sure. Hold on.
Just a reminder while Kinley's getting ready that if you have questions, please put your questions into the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll review those questions and we'll ask the speakers to respond.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good evening, everybody from all over the world. I'm very pleased to be presenting on behalf of Bhutan and our on SMART implementation here in Bhutan. And we'd like to thank the network for giving us this opportunity. I'm currently working as Chief of Forest Protection and Enforcement here in Bhutan. And to begin with, I'd like to give a little information on Bhutan and why SMART is relevant here in Bhutan. Many people may not even be knowing about where Bhutan is located. So our constitution, for example, mandates that we have to have 60% of our country under forest cover for all times. Probably the only country in the world where the constitution gives such a mandate. Currently, we have about 71.5% of our country under forest cover. In terms of protected areas, we have about 51.4% of Bhutan under a network of protected areas, including biological corridors. Unlike in many other countries around the world, in Bhutan, forest rangers have dual mandates of not only conservation and protection, but we are also tagged with responsibilities for giving services to our citizens.
Kinley, can I interrupt you just for a second? Could you maximize your screen, go down to the bottom of the screen and click presenter view, and then you'll get a full screen view. There we go. Sorry, please continue.
Is it okay now? Is it
Yes,
on
it's
now?
great. It's good. Thank you, Kinley.
All right. Sorry. I haven't used Zoom a lot, so sorry about that. Anyway, just to continue, one of the things we have in Bhutan now is we have adopted the national zero poaching strategy in 2017. And a few things why SMART is relevant in Bhutan and where we are doing it and who are involved. We started implementation of SMART in Royal Manas National Park in southern Bhutan in 2013. Following that, we did the national rollout in 2015, and we have WWF Bhutan and their network supporting us in that venture. Currently, we have about 10 national parks and then 14 forest divisions in Bhutan under the Department of Forest and Park Services, who is implementing and championing SMART in Bhutan. And some of the key reasons why we do SMART in Bhutan is we are taking spatial stock of all forestry and conservation services and monitoring activities using SMART. Also delivering data for informed decision making at various levels, from field chief levels to the department and then eventually to the ministry in terms of planning and management. Also curbing poaching and illegal forest resource harvesting by strategizing deployment of our staff in the field based on information that we get through SMART, and then finally encouraging, motivating, and basically recognizing the work our staff do throughout the country, in the field, in forests, in the rain, in the sun, recognizing their hard work through spatial information that they record. So in terms of the site or the landscape, we are implementing SMART nationally throughout Bhutan. Here on this map, you can see that the larger different colored blocks are the national parks. These are the national parks. Then you can see that the dark greens on our forest management units from where we take a commercial timber. You can also see this little red dots, which are community forests. So in terms of application, we are using SMART throughout Bhutan. For SMART, we have recently developed and endorsed what we call the National SMART Implementation Protocol, or NASIP. And as you can see, the data flow up and down through this network. At the center, we are now guided by what we call the National SMART Core Group, on which I'm representing as being the Chief of Forest Protection and Enforcement Division. But you can see that through the network, for both protected areas and areas outside the protected areas, we have this different offices through which we do our SMART and exchange or communication of information from the field and also from headquarters. In terms of challenges, because we have just recently embarked on implementation of SMART in Bhutan, and as you all know, in terms of IT and all that, we do have a lot of issues. But basically, our rangers in the field, for the Forest Department in Bhutan is one of the largest establishments with about 1,500 technical people. And in terms of implementing SMART, we do need a lot of capacity building, infrastructure, and so on. So we are still grappling with challenges surrounding how we can train our people in the field to handle smartphones, be able to use web-based technologies and so on. Also, one challenge we have with SMART implementation is not many of our areas in Bhutan are covered under internet networks. So that again is a challenge in terms of being able to send information online. Also, we have challenges with having adequate infrastructure and equipment. We have been using cellular phones when we started, but now we have moved on to Samsung and other smartphones. And another challenge is that while Smart as being an open source technology keeps on developing, we have developed our own national level database and data models. And so having to keep changing it frequently, it's somewhat of a challenge. The pictures you see here are from yesterday and today. And we have just completed the Western region SMART training for our rangers here. We had about 40 people in our training. Some of the achievements are, we have now established a national core group who sort of like advises and gives guidance and advice related to SMART implementation in Bhutan. We have also developed a national SMART data model, and the version we have now is version 4, which is of course based on freely available SMART data models. We have also developed the cross-conservation area analysis database for use at the center. We have appointed SMART focals in all of our 24 conservation areas who are coordinating implementation, anything related to SMART in the field, in all nooks and corners of Bhutan. As I mentioned, we started with cedar rugged phones, but we have issues with those. So now we are using migrated to Samsung. As I mentioned, we have just completed the regional trainings for our field rangers. And so we expect that the version 4 of our data model will now be used more frequently and more effectively. And another achievement is we have increased field patrol effort because with SMART we are doing monthly patrol plans. So, an example of an achievement is in Royal Manas, where we started implementation of SMART on a pilot basis in 2011. They counted 11 tigers, and now we have counted about 29 tigers in Royal Manas National Park. Also, the Indian one-horned rhino, which we have not observed in Bhutan for many, many years. It's supposed to be here in Bhutan, but we have never seen it for many, many years. But with SMART use, we have been able to capture some pictures in 2018 by our field rangers. In terms of what will keep SMART going in Bhutan, I feel that we have very strong policy and government support in Bhutan. We have endorsements for its application and implementation at the highest levels. We also have very strong conservation and protection policy in Bhutan, which is why you would see that more than half of our country is in protected area network. And also for us, decisions that we take at the central, at the field, every level, it's now will be based on SMART information, which is comprehensive as well as precise. And now with use of SMART, we are also taking a spatial approach to resource management and allocation. Because as I mentioned, it's not just protection that we are doing using SMART, but we are also using it for giving out resources, allocating resources. And I feel that now we have a large group of motivated and interested field rangers in Bhutan, and who now are slowly getting well equipped with equipment and things they need for doing their work on the smart interface. And also we have very strong international collaboration and support, and especially WWF. Rohit is here. We have initiated this with WWF network, and we hope that in the coming years we'll have other networks and friends to support us and make this happen in Bhutan. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kinley. And just a reminder, we'll take questions for Kinley and other speakers at the end of the session. So we'll move on to the next speaker, who is David Kinai, who's joining us from Kenya. He's working for the Masai Wilderness Conservation Trust. David, over to you.
Does anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just a minute to share my screen. Okay, thank you. David Kanai, working at Masai Wilderness Conservation Trust. And first I'll start with our goal, which is preserving wilderness, wildlife, and cultural heritage across our Pasifik ecosystem to create sustainable economic benefit for the Masai people. In terms of location, we are basically in Kenya and the southeastern part of Kenya. As I said, we are within the Savo-Amboseli ecosystem, and this makes Kuku Group Ranch as an important corridor for herbivores during the dry season, because we are located between 3 parks, that's Savo, Amboseli, and Tule Hills National Park. Just as holistic to the Maasai community, we are partnering with our ecology camp Kanzi, whereby by protecting our natural resources, we are able to receive guests, whereby we get funds and all kind of funding fees, whereby we used to run the 3 programs that we are running at MWCT, that is conservation, health, and education, which improve or which take us to the MWCT goal, which the Maasai are able to benefit either direct or indirect from it. Just to come on our conservation targets, this is we are trying to mitigate the threats that conservation is facing at Kuku. That is a human population increase, habitat conversion by a human, and overgrazing. Before SMART was started, 150 rangers, whereby before the and sometimes even it leads to some data being lost. But since the SMART was started, we were able to hello? Does everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It looks like we've lost David, unfortunately. David is coming in now again. David, are you there? Okay, it seems like we've lost David. All right. So we will come back to David. And may I ask?
David's back, Tony, sorry.
He's back, is he?
Yes.
Okay, David, are you there?
Oh, I don't see him anymore.
There he is. David, can you unmute yourself? Yes, just unmute yourself, David. And you can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello, am I clear now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I just lost my internet. Oh, sorry. I think I was in this slide whereby I said since we started SMART, it assisted us to improve in improving conservation effectiveness, also in data collection for both rangers and Simba Scout in the field. Also, it helped us to in result-based data management, whereby when we receive the data from the field, we are able to give the feedback and evaluation to the data collectors in the field, and that gives us a good planning when it comes to conservation in Kuku. So the champions, we were introduced to SMART by ZSL, whereby Lana Muller and Doug Van Hoos, who are the conservation managers, attended a workshop. And when they came back, they trained myself, Muteri and Tanin, who is a ranger commander, and also Emmanuel, who is our ranger admin surgeon. And three of us, we are one of the team who are now working in the office, trying to receive the data from the field and analyze the data in SMART. Some of the challenges that we faced when you are starting out SMART one was literacy, because as our data collectors never went to school, so we started by first training them even very far end by even showing them how to count, how to write their names, and also introducing them to smartphone, because there before they never even knew to use any phone. So introduce them to the smartphone and also the app, the tool we are using also to put the data in the smartphone, which is called Cyber Tracker. Also, the remoteness of the area was a challenge, because even to get a place to charge up the device, it was also a very big challenge. And sometimes we have to ride motorbikes or use a long distance to get the gadget and bring to the office for download. So sometimes they might delay the person in the field to get back the device to collect the data. It took us about 3 months and above to train them, and also to get the data mode, or to install the SMART. And after we are trained, also we called the teams in the ground to our headquarters, whereby we trained them, and now we took them back to the field, and now they are doing a great job, whereby they are putting data to the gadgets and to receive them in the office. Our achievements are, as I said before we were introduced to the SMART, we were not the patrols were not effectively being done by our rangers. Of them, they didn't really know what they are doing or which area were they covering, because there was no feedback after the job they have done. So after we introduced SMART, we were able to do the mapping and reporting, whereby at every quarter we have a meeting. We call both the Simba Scout and the Rangers in the field. They come to our headquarters, we do a meeting, and we show them their jobs, and by using of the SMART, we are able to set for them the targets and the points, whereby every day they have their patrol points, whereby they have to visit. As you see from 2014, you can see the red parts or the circles or the loopholes when you are trying SMART. When we started SMART, we had a lot of loopholes, 2014, 2015, but by receiving this data, we convert them into maps. We are able to see the loopholes, and we improved by employing more rangers and putting more ranger posts to the edges of the ranch. There's a difference from 2014 to 2018, whereby rangers were covering almost the whole group ranch or the whole conservation area. Another achievement is by using of Smart Connect, we are able to get the real-time data. Was there before we used to use the motorbike, whereby it was expensive because also fuel is money, and also there's emission of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. But since there was introduction of Smart Connect, we were able to put the hotspot at all ranger posts, whereby when a ranger goes to a patrol in the morning, start the patrol at the ranger post. When he comes back, he has to enter the patrol, and because there's a presence of Wi-Fi, we were able to receive the data at our headquarters in the SMART, and that has really assisted us because there's a reduction of data loss and also the consumption of time for the motorbike to get the farthest ranger post to get the device to be downloaded to our server. Also, another achievement is when it comes to incidences. You see, from 2012, whereby we were introduced to SMART, there is a lot of several incidents have happened. For example, there's elephant incidents for human-wildlife conflict. There was bushmeat, and also deforestation. From 2012 to almost 2014, end of 2014, our rangers in the field have recorded a lot of incidences because by calling them here and showing them the hotspot of maybe bushmeat or areas that are affected by elephants conflict, they were able to visit those areas, and they recorded a lot of incidents. And by doing that, we are able also to advise the community or to do a lot of balances to the community. And you see, by time from 2015, you see all the incidents are like decreasing. So even the bushmeat incidents have decreased, and the same thing to deforestation, because now our rangers are covering the areas that were not covered before. Also, drivers that made SMART sustainable at our area is by in for the staff, the rangers, and all the teams in the field have accepted that SMART is good, and it is more easy to use than the analog way they are doing the GPS. They are using the GPS to collect the data and filling on the data sheet, because it consumes a lot of time, and it was very hard for them to keep on those data sheets. Also, SMART is sustainable at our area because by receiving the real-time data, it's more good, and we can also store data in our server, not like before, whereby we just receive the data from our rangers in the field and just keep them on a shelf, the files. So now it's a very great achievement that we see that SMART has taken us another step. So thank you very much. That's the only thing I can share now about the SMART. Link.
Thank you very much, David. Wonderful presentation. So we'll go on to our next presenter, who is Julio Mars from WCS Belize. And just a reminder, if you have questions for David, for the other speakers, please type them into the chat. We'll try to respond in real time. And the questions that we're unable to get to during the presentations we'll address at the end of the presentations. in the
Thank you very
session,
much.
question and answer session. Thank you, David. Julio, would you like to line up your slides?
Hi, good morning. Are you able to see my screen already?
Yes.
Tony? Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Julio Maz, the Technical Coordinator for Sustainable Fisheries with the Wildlife Conservation Society, and I've been using SMART since 2013. So in Belize, we're using SMART to improve protected areas management. However, we're also using it outside of protected areas. So it is not limited to only protected areas, but some management approaches that require the use of documentation of the effort. Just a bit of background in regard to where Belize is. In my experience, a lot of people don't know Belize and have never heard of it. Belize is located in Central America. We have a total of 3,772 square kilometers. It's very small. However, we're very rich with biodiversity, both in the marine and the terrestrial areas. We have the largest living barrier reef and the second largest barrier reef. We work primarily, the presentation I'm going to talk about today is primarily based on the marine environment. Our major fisheries are lobster, conch, and finfish. We do have other species, but those are the major ones. And the threats are illegal fishing, transboundary illegal fishing, illegal wildlife trade, and the illegal development as a result of tourism development. So fisheries management in Belize, we have a fairly new fisheries act, which was passed in 2020, and it's also complemented by a set of regulations. A very important thing for Belize is co-management of marine reserves. Most of the marine reserves are co-managed by non-governmental organizations, which is very important in the success that we've had with the implementation of SMART. We also have support of international non-governmental organizations such as WCS and WWF, TNC. We have some of the large bingos in Belize. The other important aspect of Belize is we work the fisheries sector works mostly through fishing cooperatives and fishermen associations who participate actively in the management. The fisheries waters are divided into 9 fishing areas, and the access to use these areas for fishing is done through a managed access system. And patrols are conducted on a regular basis throughout the coast from north to south of the country. Why SMART? In 2013, there was a national enforcement assessment done by the Fisheries Department, supported by WCS. And what we found out was that there was a difficulty in making assessments of where we are in terms of enforcement and the protection of marine resources. Even though there were standardized procedures to do certain things, there wasn't any standardized way of documenting this information, and as such, being able to do this type of assessment was a labor-intensive exercise because the information was all over the place, and then it was a matter of mixing and matching reports to be able to get something concrete. The planning of the implementation, first, one of the things that has to be done is the consultation process. You have to consult with your staff, you have to consult with your stakeholders. Is this going to be a right thing for us? Is there anything that we need to know from your area? What type of equipment do you have? In order to understand how the implementation process will move forward, you also have to plan. How will you implement this? What hardwares do you need? What softwares do you need to complement SMART? In our case, we work a lot with ArcGIS as a tool to better provide reports and easier to use infographics. And also the establishment of protocols and plans that are needed to ensure a comprehensive adoption of SMART within any of the areas that you plan to use it. The preparation is key. You need to develop a data model. In most cases, we try to develop a huge data model that covers all. My recommendation is that you start basic, start simple, and start with something that works for you. Then you need to secure the hardware, making sure that we have all necessary hardware to make this happen. Sometimes a small thing like a piece of cable and that is needed to connect the phones or the mobile devices to your computer are not available, and also you have to make sure that you have the replacement equipment available within country, because in the marine environment, devices are damaged fairly quickly, as the marine environment is very unforgiving. The other thing is the rollout, the training. How do you do training? That was key for us, as we had to break the training into several components to ensure that we're targeting the individuals that we want to reach during the training. So there were training for managers, there were training for rangers, there were administrative training, so that everybody gets to understand the components that is relevant to them. The supervision, I think we've spoken a lot about supervision. There has to be someone supervising this information coming in. Or how often do we need reports? When do we present these reports? To who do we present these reports? For what are these reports? Who have access to these reports? These are all things that we need to ensure there's a clear mechanism in place for all of these, because the information you're collecting in regards to enforcement is sensitive information. As such, it should be guarded to ensure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, and that your information from enforcement is used against you or your officers. And as such, there has to be some level of supervision, and that also leads us into the access. Who has access to this information and for what purposes? And lastly is planning again. And that is very important in regards to the SMART approach, in regards to the feedback. And I think that is a very key element that motivate rangers on the ground to do better. When managers are bringing back the information that they're gathering and presenting it to them in reports, which now they can use to better plan and execute their patrols. The data model development, I know some speakers have spoken about this already. I think Tony mentioned it. It's first mapping your threats, mapping where your threats are coming from. As I said, we were having phishing, coastal development, recreational use. And then we did what data we collected. We came out with indicators. And finally, we had a data model that represented our data collection needs. Then the equipment for SMART is very basic, simple as a one desktop computer running Windows 10 or Mac, the cables that are required for connection, having suitable Android devices. Depending on where you're working, you may not need it to be rugged, but if you're doing surveys and it's not in a very intensive work site, that's fine. But if you're working on the forest, you're working out at sea, it's best to have rugged devices. For those asking about what is Smart Connect, I just want to show you here. There's two ways of getting data to your mobile devices. Here on the screen, there are the mobile devices whereby you can connect directly to a client, to a desktop client, and download your data from the mobile device to your client. Or you can actually configure the Smart Connect software to upload the data from the mobile device to the Smart Connect server and then synchronize back to the server. But there has to be a mechanism that ensures that all of this information is synchronized into one location so that analysis can be done at a national level. And this is where we are almost there here in Belize. Within the marine sector, we're almost there. Most of the organizations are working very closely with us to get this accomplished. I must say that in the terrestrial, we've got a lot of momentum as of this year. And we're hoping to be able to close those gaps in the terrestrial to have a similar mechanism working in the terrestrial protected areas. But again, it's very important to provide feedback to the guys collecting the data. Training, as I said, we have a lot of training materials in addition to what is already on smartconservationtools.org. We have created these modules in PowerPoint, in PDF, which we can easily share with all our managers, and we usually leave copies of these with them after trainings. And in addition, we do hands-on training, whereby we've taken individuals out to their specific protected areas, tested data models, tested data collection, download information with them on real time. We also have online trainings using TeamViewer. We do remote support in most cases whereby the access is restricted by the distance, or even right now due to COVID, we're providing the remote assistance. So monitoring and evaluation, we use information to be able to better understand what is our effort. And in most cases, I have, I think, 3 participants on this workshop, on this forum, that are using SMART to better understand the distribution of their resources, the use of their equipment, the efficiency of their staff, the types of patrols that they're doing, the types of vessels they're encountering, and also the coverage. And so there's a lot of things that we can get out of SMART, but at the end of the day, it is what questions you want to have answered. The other thing that for us is key is the data interoperability with other systems. We can bring data from SMART-EarthRanger, but we also can create dashboards similar to this using ArcGIS. Fairly simple. This probably took me about 2 to 3 hours to get it up and running. But it is something that shows you a bit more easily the information that you're generating from your protected areas, and managers can use this information to better understand how they are doing how their MPA is doing. Challenges, we have a high staff turnover, which is a challenge. So training has to be continuous, and therefore you see a lot of we've spent a lot of effort in building training materials. Damage to equipment and replacement. Here on my screen, you're seeing a rugged phone that was corroded, and we have to ensure that we have replacement parts. Other than that, we have big gaps in our data while we wait for devices to be replaced. In several cases, we have limited IT skills, and that is a problem when we're doing troubleshooting, especially when we're doing remote troubleshooting. Staff supervision and feedback to rangers, it's something that we're struggling with. However, we have improved a lot on that. A lot of our rangers have been doing much better in regards to getting their information. We also have reduced funding for patrols due to the COVID-19. That is also affecting how SMART is being implemented. But before I forget, I want to make mention a key to success in the implementation here in Belize has been the buy-in of the co-managers. The co-managers have actually been the ones to push the government agencies to adopt SMART at a national level. We have SMART endorsed by the government of Belize at both the marine and terrestrial level as a tool to be used for data collection during patrols. The success, we have improved reports for donors. Donors love that. Their reports are readily accessible and in a manner that they have a lot more information. We have improved protection for the MPAs. We have better knowledge of the users and offenders. We have also developed SMART virtual classrooms using using Google Classrooms. And this will help us going forward to be able to train much more people and to keep track on the success of our individuals. And we also have been able to develop remote support and mentorship to our partners. So questions or comments, and here is a photograph of us at a national level looking at SMART, seeing where we are, and then discussing it at a national level with the terrestrial protected areas. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Julio. And we'll take questions for Julio in the chat. If you have a question for him, please type your question into the chat and he'll try to answer it there. And questions for other speakers can go into the chat, and we'll also try to answer those as we go. So we have one more speaker left, and that's Michael Hutte from the WCS Russia program. Michael is going to talk to us about implementing SMART in Central Asia. Michael?
Yes, hello. Well, great to be here. See if I can share my screen. Did that work out? Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh.
There we go. It's coming up now.
Okay, does this look good? Normal? Can you see my whole slide?
Yes,
Looks
it's
great.
great.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here. I'll share experience with you with implementing SMART in the Russian Far East and Central Asian countries, Ukraine, for various organizations. In Russia, where I mainly work, it's for WCS. I also work for other organizations. And the perspective that I'll take is that I will try to provide, well, suggestions, maybe useful things for a person or an NGO who's asked to implement SMART, and maybe in a situation where there's not that much experience. So somebody who's not a site manager, some kind of outsider, NGO staff, or maybe somebody from a ministry who was asked to implement SMART at a site. And I won't cover all the topics, so it's a little bit jumping from one suggestion to another at various stages of introducing SMART. One thing that can sometimes be useful is to start with a kind of assessment of the suitability of a site. There was earlier already talk about that. This is one way you could go about it. Just list on the left side various things that might be important and assess them, and they're either positive in the green or in the red. Group one is basically whether it's worthwhile working there, where there's biodiversity that's worth protecting. Two is like there are various things that provide a given situation that you can't change, just a situation you happen to be in, and well, the things that you can't change during the project. Then there's the site itself, which has some weaknesses and some strengths that you can access. And to a certain degree, sometimes you can make some changes before you start. For instance, insist that the person is hired who has sufficient computer skills, or to just give an example. And then there's yourself, of the NGO that you represent, the organization that is asked to work at a site. You also have strengths and weaknesses. Is the NGO permanently staffed at the site, or can you just visit it on occasion? What is your own experience that you can use? And hopefully then it's that the weaknesses of the NGO are compensated by the strengths of the sites, and vice versa. So this gives you a kind of idea whether you can expect success, and it also helps to then develop a certain strategy, because there's not just one approach. Your approach for implementing SMART should depend on the situation you are working in. These are, well, the steps that for implementing SMART. I won't go through them. I think other people have already done that, and many of them are quite obvious. So let's move on. Some of those things I'll get back to. One of the things that I think is useful is to divide everything that needs to be done and list them, and then see who will be doing them in the beginning and then later on, a kind of planning, but also to ensure that all the stakeholders know what is expected from them. And also, I think it's important that you strive to make the site, the smart at the site sustainable, in the sense that eventually it can continue functioning without further support from an NGO. Well, usually the stakeholders that are involved are the site staff, obviously, the site itself. An NGO is very often initiating SMART at a site. Very often there are also central staff from a central conservation agency. And in the beginning, many tasks will often be carried out by the NGO, and eventually you try to hand over tasks to the site staff. That's optimal. But in many cases, you would like to stay involved. So usually you don't hand over everything, especially strategic decisions. You want to keep involved in that. You design your monitoring system and your management system based on SMART. You start with an assessment, and here I listed some of the topics that you cover in an assessment, where you collect information, insight, understanding of the site that you'll use then later on for designing an appropriate system that really is tailor-made and fits the situation where you're going to work. It's important to look at the monitoring practices that were in place before SMART. So as a minimum, SMART will also collect the data that were already collected. It's also good to look at how was patrolling protection managed before SMART. For instance, be present, participate in a number of meetings that the protection managers have with rangers, and to see what is discussed, what kind of information they use for managing, and the kind of targets, recommendations that rangers achieve from their managers. It's also really good to create some documentation, get all the relevant documents together and read them to get insight, understanding of the site, which can include annual reports that most sites sent to central agencies. It can be articles, it can be budgets, and if there are strategic plans, they're also useful. When developing a data model, my main advice is probably to keep it really simple. You should not just add everything to the model that could be useful. You should really be selective in order to create a system, a monitoring system, data collection that is not too complicated and too time consuming. I think as a rule of thumb, no more than 5% of patrol time should be allocated to data collection, and it's optimal if it's even less. If the data model is really simple, basically a few ticks on the phone will suffice, and you don't even need to stop the patrol to collect data. I think it's really important to keep take ranger morale and their skills into account. When their skills are limited and the morale is not really great, then you should really keep your system extremely simple in order so that there won't be anything like fatigue, that in the beginning they do collect data, but at a certain point they get tired of it and stop collecting data. Also look at practical things like how can you manage things, like if there is debriefing that can be organized after a patrol comes back to the office, then you can check the data and you can control quality better. So if there's an opportunity for debriefing, then you have might decide on a little bit more complicated data model. If there isn't, you should keep it extra simple. I think it's really good when you have assessed the situation, you design your monitoring system, the data model, the patrol attributes, the data attributes, to write everything down in a Word document and share it with all stakeholders for feedback, and discuss it with them in person, and be sure to take what their feedback into account and really let it have an impact on your system. That's good for the quality of the system, but it also helps to foster support, involvement, give them the feeling that it's feeling of ownership of the system. What is really important is that you include all the data collection procedures. How are the data collected, where, when, and in which way, so that everybody carries out the same procedures, which is absolutely essential in order to ensure that data can be compared between teams and different time periods, and that changes in management doesn't impact the way data are being collected. Basically, already mentioned this. Just to give you some examples of the type of procedures that you should document, define, I listed a few here. For all these things, it's often not so important how you define them, but that you define them in order to ensure that everybody collects data in the same way. When doing data collection training for rangers, I think it's really important to make it fun, to have a lunch together, tasteful lunch and some snacks, and to make it enjoyable. I suggest to include at least 3 presentations, an introduction on SMART, how it's being applied worldwide, SMART at similar sites, if you have information about that you can show. If there are no similar sites with SMART, then it's no big problem to use examples from other parts of the world. Very often SMART is introduced as part of a bigger program that tries to achieve several things, and SMART is just a part of it. If this is the case, it's advisable to also include a presentation about that larger program. And then, well, there should of course be something like an outdoor training. It's advisable to set out a route with pictures of various situations that patrols can encounter, and then ask them to document information about that situation. Very often this might turn out a little bit messy, that the different groups, all the rangers are not at one place, etc., or you explain what the situation is and some people are not listening, etc. Therefore, it's better to hand out what you ask them to document for each situation, to hand it out, to print it out and hand it out on paper. And I suggest that you make a copy of all the a manual of all the data collection protocols, procedures, and that every ranger receives a personal copy. In situations where the protected area is new and there's not much experience yet with patrolling in itself, it's best to make a kind of manual that combines all the patrol procedures in combination with the SMART data collection procedures. If patrolling is already well established, then I think it's best to make a manual that focuses purely only on the data collection procedures. It's also important to train the managers in adaptive management. How are they going to use all this data that will come available? Most importantly, they have to realize that the data should be used. A standalone database with data that's not used is obviously a waste, but I think it quite often happens. It's very useful to show the kind of analysis you've done for other sites, the evaluation of the data and the conclusions that you draw from those data, and the kind of management decisions that were based on this data. For instance, an analysis that foot patrols are more effective in catching poachers than car patrols, and that on the basis of that you try to increase the number of foot patrols. Or that you saw that certain areas were poorly visited and you tried to increase coverage. Or in the analysis, you showed up that a certain team was always starting late and other teams much earlier, and that made you decide to set targets for a minimum number of early morning patrols, or etc. Just give examples of adaptive management. And I suggest that for starters to set relative goals, in the sense like the percentage of patrols that should visit a certain area, the percentage of patrols that should be on foot, etc., instead of absolute goals. That's because you don't know when you start what is realistic, and you don't want to discourage people, or you don't want to create a situation where the goals can be easily reached and then additional efforts stop. And discuss how adaptive management will be organized, how feedback will be organized, discuss the content and decide on the content and the frequency of the reports, and who will lead them. In some situations, optimal is, of course, if the director, the manager responsible for protection will lead the meetings, but in some cases he's not really suitable, and then you have to agree on somebody else. I work in several countries, usually without direct involvement from the Central Conservation Agency, but I found out in Uzbekistan that if there is somebody made responsible for SMART within the Central Agency, and he joins the implementation and learns how to do it, that is really, really helpful. He has inside knowledge of the protected areas where you're working on SMART, but it's also very, very useful if he outranks the PA director, so he can, in the end, when needed, give clear orders on what should be done. So obviously better if it comes from the ministry than when it comes from an NGO. And to help this coordinator with them, they might forget what they're learning on the job. So it's a good idea to write everything down for them, eventually based on the local situation, a kind of tutorial for the implementation of SMART. Well, there are main messages, I think, during the whole process that you would like to try to get across to the main stakeholder groups. And the main stakeholder groups are the rangers, the database operators, and the protection managers. Well, I wrote down some of those main messages that you really want them to understand, well, what you want to get across. It's really important that the rangers understand that everything depends on them, and that they need to be disciplined and collect data on consistently, accurately on all patrols. For the database operators, also very important that they work accurately, and that they don't work on automatic pilots, but that they really check the data that comes in for a mistake. And when they find a mistake, they should address them as soon as possible. I think that they should also work proactive, always be looking for interesting things that you can find in the database and share them with the managers, and not just producing periodic patrols. For the protection managers, I think it's important, I think it's helpful to get across that they shouldn't worry that in the beginning maybe their quality of patrolling is embarrassing. The quality at the beginning is not really important. What is important that with SMART you achieve a process of continuous step-by-step progress. And what is you should try to get them to realize that introducing SMART is not something like a tool or a gadget. It's a fundamentally new approach to managing protection. And that means that they have to try to change their old habits when they start basing their protection management on SMART. Well, finally, I think it's really useful if you realize that yourself, that introducing SMART is a complicated process of change, changing the management habits, practices. At a protected area, protection is a core activity, and changing core activities is always difficult. So it takes time, and it takes planning and a really well, intensive involvement, at least during a year, to get this, to achieve a situation where it becomes sustainable. So basically, that's all that I had to say. If anybody has questions, or so many things that I didn't have time for to cover, feel free also to approach me outside this meeting.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you all speakers for the wonderful presentations today. We've gone over time, but I think that we should definitely answer your questions. And so what I'd like to do is to open up the session to question and answers. And the way that we can do this is we've actually grouped the questions into categories. And what I'd like to do now is to go over some of those categories of questions, and we'll then proceed to get the right person to answer the questions for you. All right, so here are some groups of questions. First of all, for Michael, 2 questions. First of all, what is the best approach for implementing SMART in a protected area where your personnel is most of the time temporary? I'm asking this because in my country, Cameroon, most of the protected areas are in remote areas, and eco-guards involved in monitoring most of the time do not last for long inside the same protected area. Michael, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, sure. Well, as I understand, there's a situation where the time that you can be involved in a project is limited, and maybe also, as is often the case, you're not permanently based at the site where you work. That's the case for all the sites where I've worked so far. Well, in that situation, you really need to keep the data model, the monitoring system, extremely simple, and spend a lot of time in training the local staff, the data managers, the rangers, and the protection managers, so they understand how to manage everything without your support eventually. So I think one of the traps you can fall into is start doing everything yourself. I think you should try to teach on the job everybody what is eventually expected from them. Just sit next to them and let them do it. If you, for instance, start leading feedback meetings, they get used to that. And it's very difficult then to create a transfer so that the local staff starts doing it. So let them do as much as possible from the start, and provide support.
Great, thanks, Michael. There was one more question for you about sharing your data model, and it came from Gunbarter, and I believe that Gunbarter is joining us from Mongolia, and I've just responded to Gunbarter that we have a team, or several teams in Mongolia, who are using SMART, and I've just shared their contact details so that Gunbarter can contact them and get information about the data model.
Yeah, sure, their data models will be more relevant than mine.
Yes. Okay, so let's try the next questions. We had questions for Jorge. Jorge, if you're still with us, tips about how to get governments to take SMART on board and how endorsement by NGOs can help encourage adoption.
Hi. Okay. First of all, you can work on show the tool to the hits, and then show the use of SMART this makes the government implement the tool easier. Short time results are the key for the implementation. In Colombia, you can see with the start for 3 protect areas, and actually we have 58 protect areas. It is a process step by step and show the results in a short time.
Great, thanks, Jorge. A question for David. Who are the Simba Scouts? Are they volunteers or paid staff, and how do you manage them?
Okay, thank you very much. Simba Scout is a dedicated team of Maasai warriors being hired by the trust and paid. And these warriors used to kill lions there before, but after being hired by the trust, they are now sending the message to the community that the lions have benefits and we should not kill the lions anymore. And we manage them by also giving them the smartphones, whereby they have this app called Cyber Tracker, and they also do patrols, and they record all sightings or all data that they get from the field about wildlife. So it is a team of Maasai warriors, whereby they are being paid by the trust. They are not volunteers. And then their job is trying to mitigate human-wildlife conflict caused by the lion. Yeah.
Great, thanks, David. Next question. There's another question for you, David, about I am a bit perplexed about the zero killing of elephants in the park, as these killings can sometimes pass unnoticed. How do you manage to be sure it is true zero elephant killing?
I think that question was answered on the chat.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So I think you're right there. Okay, so now the next question is for Kinley. Kinley, you said using SMART to allocating resources. Can you explain further how you allocate resources? Also, what is the role of the local community in the implementation of your SMART politics? Oh, that's also answered in the chat. Now, the next question is a question that I'll pass on to Julio. What has been the experience in implementing SMART in marine protected areas? Julio, would you like to answer that one?
Thank you, Tony. Yeah. First of all, the experience was one of a lot of learning. Belize was one of the first sites to start using SMART in the marine environment. It was an experience whereby we had to be able to find the right indicators to start documenting patrol success. Fortunately for us, we had very good partners on the ground that were willing to try and test the various versions of SMART that have come out since the version 1.3, which was the first one that I used. And that was key that everyone understood from the get-go that this was a learning experience that we were learning as we were implementing the use of the tool. And I think that was very key in ensuring the success of the implementation. Issues with the devices definitely slowed down the implementation. But overall, the implementation of SMART by acquiring more equipment. So most of the stations have upgraded their computers. Most of the stations have moved away from having a GPS, a camera, pen and paper, to now having mobile devices that allows them to do data entry even faster. We were able to resolve issues of patrol boarding forms being wet or being damaged during patrols because of rain, and also data being lost as a result of that. And we also were able to reduce to a large extent the instances whereby data forms came back empty, and we were able to now increase the quantity and quality of the data being collected. there's still a lot more that we can do here in Belize to improve the use of smart during patrols. But overall, for me, and I know I have some partners here on this forum that would very much embrace the use of the tool, as it has improved the management of protected areas where it has been it has been adopted. I don't know if that answers the question, but
thanks, Julio. I think that's a great answer. But if anybody would like to know more, you can write to Julio, and his email is, and in fact, the emails of all of our presenters are here, right here. So if anyone wants to take notes, Julio's email is here, and all of our emails are here, and you're more than welcome to write to us with your questions. Okay, so now we've got time for another 5 minutes of questions, and I'm going to go down to the last question. Okay. Okay, here we are. Is anyone using SMART for research and monitoring forecast management within a protected area? What is the best approach to merge? Okay, so I can answer that. So there are some projects in Laos that are implementing SMART in the Annamite Mountains, and there are some projects in Bolikamsai province that are using SMART. So if you're interested, my colleagues who are working for WCS in Laos can help you, and please write to me after the webinar, and happy to share some information and put you in contact with people who are using SMART for managing areas that are karst areas. The next question is, what is the best approach to merge different models into a master? For instance, our area of operations is such that there are custom models for collecting key wildlife features, others for general law enforcement. All these section models are administered by field officers. How can I merge them at a single master model without creating a conservation area for each of these within my SMART? Julio, would you like to take a crack at answering that question? Are you able to do that?
Sure, Tony. Without having to do multiple conservation areas, what I would recommend is that you create one conservation area, one new conservation area. You take the 3 data models that you have and you merge them into one. However, a tricky part of this will be to ensure that you have all the stations lists for all the conservation areas that you're using to be in that one conservation area. You have to look at all the station lists, all the transport types, all the employees into that one. And once you've done all of that administrative part of SMART, then you can do the importation of all the patrols or all the surveys that you've done on the multiple conservation areas and import it into this master one that you've created. If you just want to do analysis, then what I would recommend is for you to do a cross area analysis, whereby you can have two conservation conservation areas, and you can analyze data across the different data sets that you have. In a nutshell, I think that's how you could go about doing that.
You're muted, Tony.
Thank you, Julio. Thanks for that answer. Another question for Jorge. Jorge, how is the use of the ecological plugins going in Colombia? Can you give an example of what data you are collecting? And are you doing surveys?
Okay, actually, in 2020, we have a migration of the information to monitoring to other tool called Sula. In this moment, we have the migration, the information of Sula to SMART. And in this context, we are developing different data models in the ecological records for the monitoring of the climate data, birds, turtles, and large mammals or mammals. These models is start to construct, and we hope in 2020 implement these models in protected areas if the pandemic in the pandemic time no lo excuse me the pandemic time we have Tuvalu.
Thank you, Jorge. Thanks for that answer. We have time for 2 more questions. I'm going to show them here now. So the last 2 questions. Does anyone have tips about how to get governments to take SMART on board, and how endorsement by NGOs can help encourage adoption? Rohit, would you like to take a shot at answering that question?
Sure. I'm like, again, the response to this question, like, it will depend on different country, and I can just give 2 examples or 2 key points here. Bhutan is a very good example. So it's always good to start with one site and show as a good working example, and then it's easier to convince the government once they start seeing the value of SMART. And second point, which is quite important when we sell SMART to government authorities for endorsement, what is important is not to sell it as an NGO push, rather sell it as something that will help in doing their work better. For example, what one strategy we use, we go to the park and ask them what are the needs that you need, that what are the information, what information do you need for effectively managing your protected area, and are you getting that information currently? If not, okay, here is a tool that can help you to get that information. So rather than explaining it at something which is NGOs trying to push something, it is better to explain something that can help governments in doing their own work. And these 2 strategies have really worked in getting the endorsement from the government.
Thank you, Rohit. I'm thinking that we probably are running out of time. So what I'd like to do right now is to wrap it up, and I'd like to wrap up by saying thank you to our presenters. And if you're interested in learning more from our presenters, I'm showing the slide there with our contact details. So thanks to everyone for joining, and thank you very much to our presenters for giving us your time and your expertise and sharing your experience with the SMART community. It's been a really wonderful experience, and I think that we had about 150 participants tonight. So there was a great sharing of knowledge through this webinar. So thank you very much for your participation. And if people are interested in contacting individual speakers, there's the contact details. You can write to us, and we're very happy to answer questions and to provide support and thoughts on how we can help you to improve your implementation of SMART. So also, I'd like to thank Monica from the SMART Partnership for coordinating and administering the webinar tonight. It was a great effort. Thanks, Monica, and thank you all for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. So,
you're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
okay, good night, everybody.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.